Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar. What is new in the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler VAPS for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central? My name is Martin Karlovic and I'm the host for today. I'm CEO and co-owner of NETRONIC Software, and I'm really glad that you are here with me today to hear the latest and brightest about the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler for Business Central. Just some housekeeping details. Of course, as this is a webinar, you're all on mute. And this is not because I don't want to talk to you and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Contrary is the case. I'm very much interested to hear your feedback, to read your thoughts, to get challenged by you via questions. So if you need to know anything, if some things are unclear, then please use the GoToWebinar chat pane and ask the question. As long as I'm on PowerPoint, I will immediately get a notification and then try to answer the question on the fly. But while I'm doing the demo, I might not see these notifications because then I'm not on my PC, but on a virtual machine. And then it might take a while before I go back to PowerPoint and then see your question. So please, please, please ask anything that you need to know and that is unclear. And with this, let's look into what we have been building for the VAPS over the last couple of months, so last 3 months, and what will be released actually by the end of this week. And with this, for all of you who do not know the VAPS, just for your information, this is not a webinar in which I will tell you what the VAPS is and how the base functionality is. So this webinar is more meant for those guys of you who know the VAPS already and now want to see what is coming as new functionality. Of course, this will give you an impression of what the VAPS is, but this is not a hey, what is the VAPS and here are the main functions type of webinar, but this is a webinar made and designed and targeted at people who already have seen a little bit of the VAPS before. So the VAPS is actually the first finite capacity visual scheduler that fully integrates into Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. It is an app that you can download from AppSource and that certified NETRONIC partners also can download from our partner community. And it adds functionalities to the proven manufacturing capabilities of Business Central. So it is not just a visual drag and drop scheduler, but there is new manufacturing capabilities that come with the VAPS so that we can really support and facilitate a true finite capacity scheduling. The VAPS is purposely built for Business Central from version 14 cumulative update 1, and it is available both on-prem and on AppSource. And with every new version we build, we go back to Microsoft again and submit it for AppSource validation again and again and again. So this is the VAPS. We are building the product in a way that we kind of try to get a new version out once in a quarter, at least. And so we shipped the last version, the version 1.2, in the beginning of July. And so now we work July, August, September. Very hard and intense to come up actually with a couple of also major functionalities. So here's an overview, and I will go through most of them in my presentation later. So we worked on integrating the VAPS, so the finite capacity scheduling, with MRP and with the planning worksheet, so that let's say that we kind of try to overcome the constant battle between planning and scheduling. And as a side effect of this, you now can change the production order status from the visual scheduler because release production orders become even more important when these things are tight integrated. We introduce a new view that we call the sales order view. So where we look actually at sales orders and at the sales order due dates and see how the production orders that were made from this sales order match against the deadlines of the sales orders. We introduce a first set of KPIs to compare different simulations. And as a side effect of us building KPIs, we also now do an automatic initial population of the required due date field. So the required due date field is a new field that we introduced to the production order header, so that we have a user-controlled field that we use to match that we treat as the delivery date to the customer, or the date when the production order really should be finished, and that the user to almost 100% controls. So the only thing where we give this field a value now is when a new production order is created, either from the planning worksheet or from a sales order or manually. So these are the bigger things. Then we have a couple of minor things, like we have integrated search functionality so that you can quickly search for a production order. We made the bar label text and the tooltip text customizable, and we also made improvements how to calculate the earliest material availability date, EMAT. So this is happening pretty much behind the scenes. So for all VAPS partner, we will publish some material about this, and we will also update our EMAT courses in the Visual Scheduling Academy. But this is nothing to drill down in this meeting today. So before we go to the demo, let's talk about some conceptual stuff first, and let's have a closer look in terms of what we have been doing to better integrate MRP and the planning worksheet with the VAPS, and also why we did so. And so what many people overlook, and typically also most of the customers overlook, is that actually when it comes to like planning, or when it comes to looking at production data, there are different planning horizons, and these horizons require different tools. And I will use a graph that I found at www.usedynamics.com. So this is a really great page with a lot of tutorial videos about Business Central, and I found the slide there and adapted it while I was actually learning about different planning horizons. And when we look at this, actually, we have three major, let's say, phases. The one is like the past, when we look back, and this is all about reporting. Then we have the current time. This is the execute, where we actually execute a schedule. And then we have everything that is, let's say, after today, or after this shift, or after this hour. And this is this kind of is the time frame for which we need scheduling and planning tools. And I really encourage you that you make yourself, but also your customers, aware of this, because I have, let's say, I would say 50, 60, 70% of my sessions when I talk with our customers about the visual production scheduler, which is a scheduling tool, and scheduling always is something that points into the future. They ask me about BI and reporting. So it is important that we get this concept of different planning horizons, and that they require different tools. And then for reporting, of course, we need to deal with historic data. So this is BI and costing. This is advanced analytics, Power BI, some cost calculations, KPI dashboard. So this is all like the reporting stuff. Then when it comes to execution, this is means executing the current schedule. So people on the shop floor working on the production orders that you as the production scheduler put into the schedule. So the tools are work order list. We may have shop floor control systems. We may have MES systems. We may have time and attendance systems. So everything that helps us get the work done now and capture the data that tells us how we are doing with getting the work done. And then everything that goes beyond the execution, this is where scheduling and planning comes into play. And then there might be actually a quite short time frame for maybe tomorrow and the next 14 days. And of course, this may vary depending on what kind of processes and requirements you or your customers have. But this is in German we say, the fine planning, not the rough planning, but the fine planning, the operational fine planning. And this is what we support with scheduling, where it comes to finite capacity scheduling, visual scheduling. scheduling critical items, bottleneck scheduling. So this is kind of the assignment of operations to machine centers, to work centers, the decisions about the sequencing, about the prioritization. All of this is scheduling. So this is resourcing, and this is sequencing, and this is resourcing and sequencing, and all of this. And there are a lot of tools, and we actually put a lot of effort in place to provide you and your customers with these tools. And then there's a longer time frame that typically should start after the scheduling period where it comes to master scheduling. So we do the MRP, the material requirements planning, where we have the planning worksheet, where we do demand-driven time planning, where we not that much look at finite resources, finite capacity, but where we build the overall schedule for the next couple of weeks and months in order to kind of match supply and demand. And then afterwards, there's the long time planning, like maybe from once in a while, we run MRP with long lead times based on the demand forecast. And then we have the assets budgeting. And so this is definitely nothing that we get involved with the tools that we are building. But we look at the visual advanced production schedule, and at what we're actually doing with the current release is we kind of try to kind of make the VAPS, so the finite capacity scheduling, aware of the fact that there is also a planning worksheet, and that there is a master planning that may reach beyond the time that the VAPS looks like. And likewise, we also started to make the planning worksheet aware of that there is the VAPS, so that other than in the previous picture, they are no longer, let's say, separated from each other boxes, but that we have an integration and a closer working together between the finite capacity scheduling with the VAPS and the MRP planning with the planning worksheet. So as I said earlier, that there are different time frames, and for the different time frames, typically customers need to work with different tools, and these different tools should have different areas of responsibility. So the tool that is responsible for scheduling should do scheduling and should not do master planning, and the tool responsible for master planning should do master planning on that and not scheduling. And so we actually looked at ways of how to differentiate which kind of production orders are those production orders that the VAPS is responsible for, and what are the production orders that MRP should be responsible for. And we really started off this one simple, so that we now establish the differentiation, and we have ideas in mind how to make this more sophisticated. But for the time being, we just wanted to kind of build into our products different areas of responsibility that we can say, okay, we actually should be able to define rules under which the VAPS is responsible for production order, and other rules under which MRP is responsible for the production order. And if the VAPS is responsible, then the production order line should not be changed by MRP, right? Because it falls into the domain expertise of finite capacity, and once it is finite capacity scheduling, and once it is finite capacity scheduled, why should MRP change, delete, reschedule, and do whatever MRP does with this production order? Likewise, we also should have an area where MRP is responsible. So independent what I do with my drag and drop, with my Gantt chart, with my finite capacity scheduling, this may be good to do some simulations, but overall, like when it comes to the mid to longer term demand planning, then MRP should be responsible, and we should have a way to kind of differentiate and deterministically describe when it is VAPS's territory and when it is MRP's territory. So the factors that we initially started with to determine the area of responsibility is a time frame, like the image before. There's a shorter period of time, a VAPS, longer period of time, or the period of time following this VAPS period, it's MRP, and of course there's a status of production order. So with the time frame, we introduce something that we call the frozen period, and the frozen period is a period that we define relative to the work date, and in this period the VAPS is responsible, period. And then we say, okay, in addition to this, the production order status should have an impact on what MRP does and what not. And we say, okay, with release production orders, the VAPS is responsible. With firm plan production orders, the VAPS is responsible during the frozen period. And if the production order is just planned, then MRP should be responsible. So this allows us kind of drafting a matrix like this, where we look at the time frame with after the frozen period and within the frozen period, and where we can differentiate production order statuses. And with released production orders, the VAPS is in charge. With firm planned production orders, once they are in the frozen period, the VAPS is in charge. And what we will do is actually we set on the production order routing on the production order line level, we set the planning flexibility to none when a simulation is published and the respective production order is within the frozen period, and when the next regenerative plan is created. Okay, so we will only change the planning flexibility if all of these criteria apply. So we will never change it just by you moving stuff in the visual schedule. No way. We also will not change it by you moving stuff in the VAPS and then publishing the simulation. Also not sufficient. But we will set the planning flexibility to none if you move a release production order into the frozen zone, if you then publish the simulation, and when somebody, maybe the master planner, then creates the next generative plan that also includes this time period, then we will set the planning flexibility to none. With other firm plan production that are outside the frozen period, MRP and planning worksheet is responsible, and likewise MRP and planning worksheet responsible for the plan production orders. So this is how we just implemented, and with this conceptual stuff, I'd like to switch over now to the product. And need to log in again. Show you a couple of things here. So how the things that we built actually look and feel like. So first of all, the NETRONIC VAPS here is in my Business Manager Role Center. And for all of you who are not familiar with the VAPS, it all starts in the simulation area, because with the simulation area, you actually can build multiple simulation of your production schedule, and I will do this over the course of this webinar, and then you can actually compare those simulations. So now, shortly before this webinar, I created already a simulation, and we will look at the data in the production order status color scheme. So we will see release production orders in orange, firm plan production orders in dark blue, and release production in orange, firm plan production orders in dark blue, and planned production orders in light blue, like many of you know from our own product visual production schedule. So this is how my VAPS looks like right now. I look at it by machines, by work center groups. So I have a machining work center group, I have a finishing work center group, and I have a quality, and I have a subcontracting work center group here with the respective work centers. So these are subcontracting work centers. I'm currently not using them for this demo. I have a finishing work center group with 2 work centers, assembly and quality control, and I have a machining work center group with drilling, milling, turning, sawing, and welding, and then a couple of machine centers in this respective work centers. What we also see is that we add a standby resource to every work center, and this standby resource contains all production orders that have been added by Business Central, either via the planning worksheet or from a sales order or from a production order, and that are not yet part of my schedule. So everything that you see on the machine centers here has been scheduled by me before and has been published. So now, when I open this schedule, I recognize, okay, everything is actually in my schedule. This is my work date. This is my scheduling start, which is kind of needed for every bulk scheduling activities, and I purposely set the scheduling start as 1 day after the work date, so that my work date, the 28th, actually is a date that I control and where I don't have any automatic scheduling happening, but this is kind of my area, my really short-term area of control. Then you saw a third vertical line. This is the end of the frozen period. So let me quickly get out of the simulation and go to the VAPS setup. And in the VAPS setup, we added a new category like the MRP setup, where I first can enable the tight integration with the MRP and the VAPS. And if I don't work with MRP, I can switch this off, because then the frozen period will just confuse me. But if you or your customers work with MRP and the planning worksheet, it is highly recommended that you switch this on. And then you can define the frozen period as relative to the work date. So I set this to 2 weeks. So my frozen period, so the period of time where the VAPS should be responsible, is 2 weeks from today, so 2 weeks from the work date, and my work date in my Kronos environment is the 28th of January 2021. So here's my work date again, like January 28th. Then a day later, my scheduling start for all automatic scheduling, and this is the end of the frozen period. And then I recognize actually, and now we come to the first thing that changed, and this is kind of smaller stuff. I have a released a firm plan production order here in light blue, in dark blue, and if I double click on this, then you actually see, okay, it's a firm plan production order, or from this tooltip text here, when I hover over it, it also says, firm plan production order somewhere in the middle. And now, as this is today, the 28th of January, and I'm pretty happy with my schedule, I actually want to release this production order so that my guys on the shop floor can start working on it and also can start booking time and consumption on it via the production journal. So I want to release this. So what I can do on the right mouse click, I can say change production order status, and then I can say, okay, I want to release it. And then we on the fly change the status of the production order. We get the information that this now got released, the color changes, and if we look at the production order in Business Central, then we see it's a release production order now. So with the new version, and this is one of the side effects for us with giving the released production orders also some more importance once they are in the frozen period. We want to make the release of a production order from the planning board more easy, and hence we added this capability to the planning worksheet. So now actually look how this plan here interacts with the planning worksheet. So now we have the schedule there, and now let's go to my planning worksheet and let's run a regenerative plan for my sample company. And I include a bit of forecast, and so it's pretty much by standardly configured system, so there's nothing spectacular on there. But what I see now, and let me focus on production order so that we can really focus on this one. Let me focus on which production orders are impacted. Not that many, it's only this one production order, and I get a cancel message. So this production order would get canceled if I execute MRP. And what I also see is that I got this flag, and this is an enhancement we did to the planning worksheet. This production order is actually scheduled by VAPS. So I say, okay, well, I'm not 100% sure if I want this to be canceled because I scheduled it via VAPS. So what's going on here? So I look up this production order number, and it is 1096. So maybe I want to look this up again in my simulation. So I go back again to the visual schedule. And then the next thing that is new is the capability when we are in the schedule to search. So let's wait for the schedule. So under actions, there is search, and I now want to search for an operation or production order. And I could do it either. I could do a status filter to kind of pre-filter this list, but I can also just say, okay, I want to search for production order 101096, and then it would be found here. Or what I could do is likewise, I could also 101096 search from here, and then you see when I'm typing is actually the list strings. So this might be interesting for you if you want to have a more dynamic display of the search results, and you could go here if you really know what you search for, then 101096, and then I can say, okay, actually I want to look at the first operation of this production order. So I select this, I say, okay. And then you see actually this product or this operation that I switch to here now is blinking. If my screen would have been like this, so if I would have been in a completely different area of my schedule, then, and let's look again for the same thing, 101069. If I say okay, then you see we automatically scrolled it, so it's in the middle of the screen and it's blinking, and then I can click on it so that the entire production order is selected. So now if we look at this one production order here, then we see actually it starts after the frozen period. So let's remember what we had in the planning worksheet. When we had in the planning worksheet said, hey, I want to cancel this production order. So this is a production order for which there seems to be no demand. And as this is after the end of the frozen period, actually MRP, although it is scheduled by VAPS, schedules that we delete this, because this production order is not in the area of responsibility of the VAPS. So now, if we look at the schedule like this is pretty obvious, which is part of the frozen period and hence part of the VAPS and which not. If you have more data, and also if some of the production orders are here and some of there, it might be not that clear. So what we also included is a new color scheme that we can say, okay, we want to do the MRP view, and then the MRP view differentiates two colors. And you will now see that most of my production orders are shown in this orange. This means these are the production orders that the VAPS is responsible for, and that one is a production order that MRP is responsible for. However, there might be cases that I have scheduled this and there were a zillion of good reasons to schedule it. I don't want MRP to cancel it. I don't want MRP to touch it, but I'm the planner and say, okay, this is something MRP should kind of take his hands off. So I could say on the right mouse click, actually exclude from MRP. And I could also take this one and say, okay, this was some playing around with data and I want to include it in MRP next time. So I can define deviations. So I do it now here. I say exclude from MRP. And now it's excluded. It has kind of same color type, but it's a little bit darker. So if it's a little bit darker than the standard color, then this means this is an exception to the standard rule. So now I did this. Let's look at the production order. We are in the simulation. This is Business Central data, and Business Central planning flexibility is set to unlimited, as you would expect it. Now I leave the simulation and I publish the simulation, so which means I'm writing back this data to Business Central. So now let's look what happens to my beautiful production order 101069, which we just looked at. The planning flexibility is still set to unlimited. However, there are some hidden fields, and that was too fast. So let me scroll down a bit. So the planning flexibility is set to unlimited, but this whole production order, I think, should have somewhere the status scheduled by, this is now scheduled by VAPS, okay? So now we know that this is scheduled by VAPS, but planning flexibility is still to unlimited. So now my colleague in master planning runs the planning worksheet again and calculates a new regenerative plan. Same settings as before, nothing changed here, no other demand, no other supply touched in between. And now what we see is this one production order is no longer part of the regenerative plan, because when we started to calculate the regenerative plan, or when we start to calculate the regenerative plan, we actually look if there are firm, wrong button, if there are firm planned production orders, and if these firm planned production orders are in the frozen period, or if there are firm planned production orders that are outside, if that are outside the firm planned, the frozen period, but made kind of are taken out of MRP by the user, like I did. And if this is the case, then before actually running the regenerative plan, then we set the planning flexibility to none and take this production order line out of the next MRP run. So now if we look at the firm plan production order again, you see the planning flexibility is set to none. And this is because I told in the VAPS I want to exclude this from MRP, and I published the simulation and I ran the regenerative plan afterwards. Okay, so far on the integration with MRP and the VAPS. So let's look at a couple of more things. So now let's go and actually create some new demand, and let's create some new demand from a sales order. So let's just assume Canon Group would have a new sales order, maybe for the, whatever, the 10th of March. And they ask for a bunch of items. Let me just add 3 items to this sales order. And we see we don't have them on stock, so we need to make them. So these are all make to order items with a pretty lean BOM. But anyway, so now what we can do is, and the VAPS will work the same. And this is the 10th of, let's say, okay, it goes to the 10th of April. Let's keep it as this is. If we would have different let's do it also on the 10th for the shipment date. So if you would have different shipment dates, then here we would also kind of take them into account. Maybe let's do this. Let's take the last item and say, okay, customer wants to have this a bit earlier. So this is on the 5th of March. So then what we can do now in order to meet the supply, we can either wait for the planning worksheet to be run next time, or we can create the production order from the sales order, and I will do it right now. The VAPS will work in the same way, and the VAPS, and what we will see you in a minute, will also work in the same way if the production order that we create is an item order or a project order. Just for convenience reason in this demo, I'm creating a project order so that I have 3 production order lines within this one new production order, the firm plan production order that I'm just creating. So I have now production order 101097 that I created. And what I quickly do so that we can find this production order easier once in the schedule, it's, I will say, like, okay, if we look at this, it should have a very specific color, and we redesigned this dialog here as well, by the way. So we make this, I don't know, I hope I have no green in there. Let's see, make this a bit of green. So now I go back to the VAPS, and we need to see that we get this sales order into the schedule. So I create a new simulation. And now I want to look at the data by production order, maybe. And I go here. And then first of all, once the schedule is up, I will see that a couple of new operations are actually, and these are all my greens one, are on the standby resource. And now I need to bring them in the schedule. And with one of the functions we released last time, I can say actually add them all to the schedule and look within all allowed alternatives for the best way possible. So now I added all of those into the schedule. And now, of course, the next thing, once they're in the schedule, my customer calls and say, hey, what is the time when you can deliver these pieces? And then I can say, okay, let me have a look. So I can say right mouse click, show in sales order view, and then we go to a new view where we see all the sales orders and all the sales orders that have production order reservations on it. So in my case, it is only that one that I just created. So this is sales order 1004. It has 3 sales item line. It is for item 5,000, I need 30 units. For item 5,001, I need 40 units. And for item 5,004, I need 80 units. And then I can drill down and actually see when the respective production order is scheduled to happen. So I can tell the customer, okay, this one here, this item 5,000 will be delivered on, or could be ready on the 17th of February. And so now I also go back into the capacity view, and then for whatever reason, if this would be a bit later, so first of all, now we have a couple of dates against, we have to match this. So if I'm moving this to very late here, it gets a red dot and the required due date line is shown in blank. And if I would now look at this from the sales order view again, what we would see here, and if everything would be collapsed, is that, if we would get a conflict message or a delivery time violation message on the sales header here. But then we could drill down into the items, and then we would see, okay, with item 5004 and item 5001, we are on track. But with this one item now, we are late. So maybe, and then from here, we would see that something is really weird in my production schedule. So this is a read-only view. So you cannot reschedule because we don't see what on all these machine centers is happening. But I can go quickly go back from here to here, like showing capacity, within a switch, move here, and then I see actually, okay, something is wrong here. So, and I have a lot of capacity as I schedule successors, and then I bring this forward. So now there could be the case that although I'm delivering earlier, this customer actually kind of could ask like, okay, and let's go back to the sales order view, and they could say, hey, is there any chance that you could deliver this item 5,000 earlier than on the 17th of February? So I would say, okay, let me, and I see that I have some time gaps here. So it seems that there are other production orders on my milling machine 1 and other production orders also on my turning machine before I can start this. So I say, okay, wait, maybe I can optimize this a bit. So I go back here and then I say, well, you know what? I will try to start this a bit earlier, so not try this here on a Friday, but maybe hang on, something is not working as I wanted, and I'm not sure why. Let me quickly go out and in and share this with our developers. We still have a bit of time to fine tune this. And this is a true demo effect because I never had this before. So now let me try to move this so I can say, okay, I want to squeeze it in here. So I squeeze it in here and I can say, okay, I want to accelerate, so reduce the cycle time of all the others. And now I have kind of a revised version of my schedule. And actually by doing this, we can quickly check with the view color mode, and this is old functionality with the progress view where we look at in time and late production orders. So let's see if making these changes caused any production order to run late. And we see actually that they are all still in time. So I say, well, you know, we can do this, but maybe the customer says, hey, let's accelerate this even more. Can you start working on this today? And I say, yeah, I can squeeze it in actually, or try to squeeze it in here. And you see now I'm actually playing with the schedule and I'm building a simulation, and then I can say, okay, from here on, I want to minimize the cycle time, so I bring forward everything else from this production order. And I still, now you see some of the stuff's turned late. I say, wow, maybe this was not the best idea at all, so maybe I leave the simulation and I quickly go back to the data as they were before. Because with the simulation, I copy data from Business Central into a separate table. So now I have my first version, and this was like, I can now change it, and maybe I changed the title of the first simulation that I say accelerated new job, whatever, so that I just know what I did. And then now I created a new simulation that has the base business-centric data again. And then I schedule new, and now the new production orders that we created, or the new production order with the free production order lines that we create from the sales order, they are still on standby. So I say, okay, let's schedule, add them all. And maybe we don't do these changes that drastically, but we only say, okay, maybe we should not start this week, but we should start early next week. So I take this and say, okay, maybe let's start on Tuesday, leave the Monday as it is because it has some running stuff, and some things that already start this week. So maybe I squeeze it in there. Didn't squeeze as I wanted to do. And then I can say, okay, from here, I want to accelerate everything. And now, as I made a lot of changes to the schedule, I also want to reduce idle times on machine. So I want to fill the idle times again. And this is also new functionality that came in with the July version, so that we now kind of optimize or improve machine utilization if possible. And now you see I'm building actually a second version of my schedule. And now, as I have two versions of the schedule, the obvious thing is, and the obvious question is, which one is better? Which one should I take? And so what we're introducing actually is the capability to compare simulations. And now I have two simulations here, and I have a couple of KPIs. So when we start this, we need to refresh the KPIs because we don't want to calculate them all. So now I'm refreshing these KPIs, and now I can compare. I see in this simulation I have 8 production orders late. Here is only 1 late. I see the total delay. I see some of buffer time that I have. So I would say, okay, actually I could take this one, and now I could also click here and see, okay, this is production order 10-10-62. This is now running late in my schedule. So now I could go actually and look at the schedule and see why this is late and what I can do against. So this is also with the KPIs. This is definitively new functionality. What we can also do from here, I can first say if I want to include outdated simulations, and also from here I can define which of these metrics that I have here, which I want to see, so I can also delete some of them, or I can also change the sequence so that I can change the order in which I want to see them. So this is definitively, I think, a pretty cool new functionality. And so as the major new functionalities, we have the sales order view that we looked at. We have the integration with MRP. We have the new KPIs that we just looked at, and then minor functions we looked at. This was the capability to release a production order directly from the planning board, and also the fact that the required due date is automatically populated when we create a new production order. So there are 3 more minor things that we can look at quickly. So far, we already had the capability to define what we call the tooltip. And the tooltip is this information window that pops up when you hover over a graphical element. In the past, we only had this tooltip here on the operation, so on the production order routing line. But going forward, you can also define a tooltip for a work center, a machine center. You can define a tooltip for a work center, and in the sales order view, you can also freely define a tooltip for the sales header, for the production order line. Should be also one here, or is it here? Yeah, for the production order line. And then again here for the production order routing line, which is the same as in the capacity view. So this is something you can define. And what you also can define, and let me go quickly back to the capacity view, and you can now define it in a much more elegant way than before. But what you also can define, and this might be quite interesting for some of you guys, is what you actually, the text that you see on these bar labels. So far, what you see here is the routing number. And the routing number may be interesting, but maybe not. But maybe you might be interested in seeing the item number, for example. So what you can do now is, under the VAPS setup, we now have the actions and configurations, and here you can configure the tooltip like I showed you for all of these various entities, but I can also define the label. And let's look at the operation in the capacity view, where we said, okay, instead of the operation number, we want to see the item number. So first of all, the item number is a variable on the production order line. So I use the production order line, then there should be an item number. And then what I also could say is actually, well, I want to see more information. So I want to have actually a new line on the bar label. And then in the second line, I want to see whatever. I want to see the production order number. Production order number. And then next to the production order number, separated by a dash, I want to see the production order line, whatever the due date. Anyway, so now I actually configured, I've really configured the bar label, as we call it. So the text that you see on the bar, and I made it now 2 lines. So you will see the line height will of course increase because we have to show more information per line. But then per these boxes, you see actually more information. So now you see the item number, the production order line number, the production order number, and the production order line's due date here. So this is also something that we build so that you really can customize the information that are shown both in this tooltip, in this information window, but also as the text on these bars, so that you can not only search for this information, but also see those information that are relevant for you. And then last but not least, we just did some minor tweaks to the alternate routing set. So with the VAPS, you have the capabilities to define alternative routings, so alternate machine centers, and then you can add this alternate routing sets to your routing so that whenever you create a new production order, you not only show what should be the default resource or the default machine center as per the routing, but also what are the allowed alternatives. And when I start this now, then first we see all alternate sets here as a list. And if I see, okay, I have a routing set that is called milling simple, then this is the way of how it is defined. This did not get changed, but on navigate, I can say, where is this used? And then I can see all the routings in which I use this alternate routing set. And with this, I gave you a brief overview of all the features and functions that we built over the last 3 months. Here's a recap of it. We looked at the better integration with MRP in the planning worksheet, sales order view. We have the KPIs. This is actually something that we will ship in the next release. We have search functionality. We have usability enhancements to the alternate routing set page. We have customizable bar label text. We have improvements to customizing the tooltip. And what I didn't show you, but which happens below or behind the scenes, is that we made a lot of changes and improvements how we calculate the earliest material availability date. So we plan to make this new version 1.3 of the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler available on this week Friday, so on the 2nd of October. This means we will then upload it to our VAPS partner community for all VAPS certified partners and for the on-prem customers. And at the same day, we also upload it to Microsoft AppSource for validation, so that it can validation by Microsoft. So it then can take another 5 to 8 days for Microsoft to review it and then to release it to their services, so that everybody running the product from AppSource should have it by mid of October. And of course, it will be made available for all Business Central versions, starting with version 14, Cumulative Update 1. If you are interested in the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler and want to have a closer look, we have the product page. there's a page on how to become a VAPS certified partner, because we actually require that you do some training on the VAPS and that you also show some commitment for the product before you can resell it. We have a rather brand new ebook with 47 pages that we come out with new product features also need to update, but it is still quite relevant to get a comprehensive and extensive introduction into the product. And with this, I thank you very much for attention, and now it's good time for you to ask questions. So I see that there is the first question about reselling and becoming certified partner. We need to make indicative offers. For this purpose, we need to know price of VAPS, but we were told that we cannot get price until we have certified consultant. I'm happy to give you a price indication afterwards. So I will reach out via email. So typically, we can give you a price indication, but we will not share the whole price list and engage in a zillion of pricing discussions before you are certified. But I can definitively, and I'm willing to give you a price indication. So I will send you an email right after this webinar with just asking a couple of questions that I need to know to give you a price indication. So are there any other questions? So I don't see any questions right now. So if there are no more questions now, then thank you very much for joining me for this webinar. I'm really excited, really excited how the VAPS is taking shape and how we are building new functionality. We already have kind of exciting plans for what is going to come with the next version. And if you need to know something, really drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm so happy to engage. And I'm really committed to this product and also to helping you sell this product and bring this product to your market. So I just seen some nice words on the product improvements. So thanks, Felipe, and thanks, Nick. I will definitively share this also with the development teams, because now I'm only kind of the person having the joy to present the product, but the hard work has been done by the guys who develop it. So if there is no more question now, then have a wonderful evening if you're in Europe, a good night in Asia, and have a nice day if you're in the United States. Please stay all safe and healthy, and let me know if you need help with the VAPS, and then reach out directly. I'm more than happy to make this a joint success. Thanks and have a nice day. Bye-bye.